Welcome to the Pink News Network, Pink Elephant's podcast for the IT service management community.
Hey, good morning, Troy. We're on video as opposed to audio.
So practitioner radio has bumped up a notch here.
We bumped up a notch, that's right. We're adding some moving pictures of ourselves. Boy, we're really with the times.
It is the world of streaming content, the TV on the web, all that good stuff.
I'm not nearly as good looking when I see myself in video, I can just tell you that. Wow. Boy, my audio self is gorgeous.
No comment, no comment.
So Troy, what are we going to talk about today?
So I want to talk about the concept called integrated service management. It's something that we've been talking about recently. I just did a paper on the subject. We have some new exciting courses that have come out about this. But of course, the question is, what is that? And how does it relate to the other things we're hearing about, Agile, Lean, DevOps, ITIL? How does it all mesh together? And that is the point.
I mean, at Pink, obviously, we have a long, decades-long tradition of teaching service management and ITIL, and certainly we've been teaching Lean for 5 years now.
That's right.
Agile in the last couple of years, DevOps the last couple of years. So I think the prevailing wisdom or the rumor that I keep hearing out there is that ITIL really will need that. In fact, I'm starting to see actual articles and blog posts and things like that where we literally won't need ITIL. In fact, Axelos just made this announcement at Fusion a couple of weeks ago in Orlando about the fact that they're refreshing ITIL and it's going to have new elements, new areas. Right.
So, and that's a great thing, and I'm excited about that, and I'm going to be part of that a little bit as well. But the interesting thing is every time we hear about something new come on, it apparently means that what was before is no longer valuable, has no relevance, and that's where I completely disagree, actually. So let's talk about change in general. ITIL has been changing through the decades. It hasn't been static. Yeah, it's been a couple of years, obviously, and maybe we could have been there a little bit earlier, but the reality is it's not a stable and static thing in its own right. Our industry has gone through multiple changes, and each of those changes has represented a focus area. This kind of goes back to when we've talked about Lean many times, and we talk about what value is, and value in the context of Lean is three dimensions. It's quality, it's speed, and it's also cost, because you got to think about all three.
Better, faster, cheaper.
The reality is, if you deliver on only one, you're not producing on the total social contract, right? So in the 1990s and the early 2000s, the words we used were availability, resilience, compliance, risk.
Stability.
That's how we added value. So
they were all abilities.
And it was all about efficiency and effectiveness, which are all positive words, because I've got to deliver the goods and make sure that it's happening when it needs to.
Right.
But in the 2008 era, what happened? What changed to our economy, to our market, to all of the things we talked about? What did we focus on when the financial crisis hit?
Well, we tended now to focus on, we needed speed to market, we needed things to go faster, and we needed cost reduction, dramatically cost reduction.
You actually stepped forward, so I'm going to bring you back to the cost reduction.
Troy.
I was trying to lead you there, George.
I know.
So companies are suddenly not having the revenue they've expected for some time. They have to cut back. They have to make cost adjustments, and so cost becomes the driver, right? And that, of course, has changed recently, now that we're getting into the speed to value, because we've had massive changes in disruptive technology with cloud enabling ubiquitous ability for the industry to be able to automate. But it's also, at the same time, automated your competitor.
Sure.
So the disruptive technology has evolved into disruptive competition, and now you have a built-on-the-web organization, a brand you've never heard of, can build a complete business model, soup to nuts, in a matter of 3 to 4 weeks.
It's frightening.
So what does that do? It focuses on the next dimension, which is speed. So what I'm trying to point out is our industry over the last 3 decades has kind of revolved around all 3 of these dimensions, at one point focusing one or the other, but that will change again in the future. Right now, it's all about speed. We have to be agile, speed to market, because we have to make sure that a competitor who's using the same technology that we have access to doesn't eat our lunch.
So there used to be an old joke. It's a really old joke, but basically the old joke said, good, fast, cheap. Good, fast, cheap, you can have any two, right? You can have any two. If you want it good and fast, it won't be cheap. You want it good and cheap, it won't be fast, right? You can have any two. So what I think I hear you saying is that my joke no longer is a joke, that I can actually have all three?
You can have all three because there's different methods, techniques, models, frameworks to ensure that you get all three at the same time. However, as a business, as a market, you might have a predominant dimension currently in focus. But at no point will the other two dimensions completely go away. I still have to deliver quality, and I have to do it in a cost-available way, because I get you speed to market, lickety-split, but if I put you in an orange jumpsuit, you're not going to be thanking me. Right, so speed to market.
Take it negative. That means I go to prison.
Yeah,
is that what that means?
That means the negative consequence.
Clarify that.
The other side is if I give you the wonderful innovation that completely disrupts the market, but then you go bankrupt and you don't get to have the joys of that market growth. Then
Right.
someone else gets the value that you were hoping to get.
Makes
So I have to do
sense.
it within a cost constraint as well. So it's normal for the industry as a whole to kind of evolve around these different principles, and or any individual organization. The premise is that all three are always present at some level. Currently, absolutely, we're focused on speed to market. So things like agile, collaborative ways of working, focused on innovation, DevOps, which is the whole how do I move requirements to value faster. It's the flavor of the day, but it's not going away, because it will always be part of now the larger thing we're talking about, service management. And that's what I want to talk about. The term service management to us has traditionally meant ITIL.
Sure, of course.
What is different now is that the term service management is growing in its own context. It means anything that I require as a capability to take demand and produce supply at a speed and cost and quality the customer would expect and value and willingly pay for.
Whoa.
So everything that we talk about that does that.
What you just described sounds to me like lean, agile, and DevOps is what I'm hearing you say.
It's not either or, it's an and conversation. Because as we get new models emerging that gives us creative ways to either create new practice or improve practice or automate practice, right? This now becomes just the new way of doing things. So this concept of change has been with ITIL the whole time as well. So in ITIL version 1, we got one thing to talk about. We had all these books about one subject.
Right.
ITIL version 2 in 2000. 2000, yes, right. It took all the individual components and made them into a life cycle. Oh, maybe we should think about, birth to cradle and to retirement. So we think about it now as a life cycle. We don't have individual capabilities. We have them in a flow of value.
Right.
The next evolution was in 2007. Now it's not about the process, but we should probably think about what the process actually achieves.
Service.
So we talk about outcomes, and so we evolved to the outcome conversation, the value conversation, and this was the beginning of thinking about it, the means, not just the ends, right? Or the ends, not just the means, put it that way. Now the last component, well, not the last one, in 2011, you saw the emergence of things like business relationship management, service catalog. So what's happening now? We're focusing more on the engagement conversation. What does the value mean from the customer who's actually purchasing it? So 2011, I changed this again to think about it more from a customer experience perspective. But getting all the quality you want, but not at the speed you need it, is a problem. Right?
It's not value. Because you have all the quality, but you don't get the value.
Put it this way, we're in a demand and supply scenario. So you have people that you produce, that you buy services from. In the day you had a babysitter who looked after your kid. You have a mechanic who looks after your car. You have a baker who makes your bread. In general sense, even if you love these people, and they're great people, you've known them for decades, if they simply say, I can't look at your kid or look after your kid for the next 2 weeks, or I can't see your car, until next month, what are you forced to do?
Find another solution.
Right, so the new dimension now has to focus on how do I not deliver value only or at a cost only, but at a speed that doesn't actually put me in a situation where I'm not supplying at the speed required.
This is great. Hey, what? Oh, Dave, are you going by? Hi. Our president, David Ratcliffe, is stumbling by, so we need to include him on this conversation.
Oh, surprise,
Dave,
surprise.
Hit your record button there, Dave. Okay.
Did you need something, George?
Dave, we're talking about integrated service management. Troy's talking mostly. I'm asking questions and trying to sound as smart as
I
possible.
noticed you were nodding a lot.
I'm nodding. That would be, but not nodding off. I want to point that out.
I've seen that though.
Okay, so how can I help?
So, Dave, I'm not saying that you're necessarily one of our top subject matter experts, but I think that you deal with the industry a great deal, more perhaps than I do. So, what's the industry take on this whole service management, ITIL refresh, integrated service management, as Troy is describing
Well,
it?
my role, I sometimes will say this to you guys, is to be the voice of the customer in our business,
Exactly.
right? I'm not out doing the hard, heavy lifting that you guys are doing, speaking much at events and at customer sites, but I'm actually sitting here in my office thinking about the customer.
Big thoughts.
Thinking about what would be valuable to them that we, as a service company, can deliver.
Right.
And so when we're in this period of change and this transition that's going on, where we're embracing more of these so-called practices or best practices, more than just ITSM,
Right.
how does the customer make use of those? How does that work? And how can we help them to do that? And so, we're talking about integrated service management right now for this reason. When we began promoting the best practices around ITSM 25 years ago, right? When
Sure.
we first, or over 20 years ago in the US, and before that in Canada, in Europe, what we talked about was how here's a process model that can be helpful to you. And up until that time, there really wasn't anything. There'd been some stuff from IBM in the early days,
The Red Books.
but there was not really anything. This was like the beginning of a new era. And we all talked about the value of process. And the customers out there, the practitioners, they lapped it up because it helped them to put some order in the chaos of their operations environment.
Right.
That's right.
What did we discover pretty quickly? Troy, you'll remember, 1999, in my office, we sat down one Saturday morning and we talked about the
been that
most
long.
frequently asked question that we get.
What tools automate this?
Which
Yeah.
tools help the processes to work?
That's right.
And we came up with a thing which is on our website called Pink Verify right now, but it's still there. So there was this connection of process to tools. Now, what happened after that? What happened after that is we try our best to encourage organizations to use the processes, but they'd be challenged. And the challenge wasn't so much the tools not being helpful, it was
Role, structure, organization.
it was people.
That's right.
And eventually we get to the point where we say, you know what, it's all about people. Processes are helpful and tools are helpful, but it's the people that are going to make or break the success of the IT service management operation.
What's a process owner? What's a service owner do? What does that mean?
Right, and so today, up until today, or up until fairly recently, the last year or two, there's not been anything out there that formally connects these enablers together. Enablers being documented processes, good tools that support those processes, and people working in ways to exploit the processes and tools.
Right.
So what do we see? What happens
Well, now we learned that we bring lean into the picture. It's all about people. We bring agile into
lean's to me, this is my view, lean and agile are a little bit different. They're specific approaches and methods for how to become more effective and efficient at certain things, right?
but very culturally transformative as
Right,
well.
but everything that we introduce that's new has a cultural impact.
Agreed.
Or culture impacts the ability to exploit something.
Lean focuses on efficiency, agile innovation, both on collaboration.
I know we talked about this once before where I said agile is really a development tool and lean is really an operations tool because it comes from manufacturing. And you're going to say, well, not quite. But let's keep things simple. Keep things simple, right? Agile is a software development approach.
And project management.
And project management,
Thank you.
which project managing software development in new services and applications.
Yeah,
Okay.
in an
lean-
adaptive way.
Yeah, and lean to me is more about what are we already doing and how can we do it.
Better.
Iterative stuff. How can we do it more efficiently?
Whatever that
reduce
is.
waste, reduce cost.
Literally,
etc.
whatever it is.
So get back to the three enablers that I'm talking about, not these specific tools of agile and lean, but the three enablers of people, tools, and processes. Where has there been anything that's documented how those integrate and work together? this is what I mean by integrated service management. Now, the original ITIL books and the ones you talked about, 2000, the version 2, was service delivery and service operation being the two. Service support, and service delivery being the two most widely read books.
Sure.
There was references in there to the tools that could help you. But all along, there's been very little reference, except for the Business Perspective series of books, if you remember those.
I do indeed.
Which taught about organizational change and how you manage transformations.
That's right.
Right? And that's the other bit that comes in. And the ITIL Practitioner book last year started to now discuss this. So we've had this realization the last couple of years that people and culture particularly, which is how people interact, behave, communicate, collaborate, the culture in your organization has a huge impact on your ability to exploit processes and tools, right?
Yeah.
That's my contribution today.
So let me build on that. Okay, so these bodies of knowledge, these reference models, these frameworks, whatever you want to call it, because they all like to call themselves slightly different things, these concepts that we've been now bringing together in an integrated way, there hasn't been any kind of reference out there that describes how they integrate. They each talk about their thing, might make subtle reference to, there's other things in the universe other than this thing, but that doesn't tell you how it connects and why it connects and what the value is. Now, the metaphor I like to use is the concept of, when Columbus, George, and David discovered the New World, how new was it?
The world?
The world.
Wasn't new at all.
So what changed, the world and or the cartography?
The map of
the map
world.
changed.
Yeah, where I didn't fall off the edge.
So the reality is, as each time ITIL has iterated, I'll use that word.
Iteration? I mean, there's iterations?
They've been longer than you might expect, but the reality is it's an iteration. Every time it iterates, the map has gotten a bit larger. The detail may be a little bit lighter because it's more about the referencing context than it is about prescriptive detail on how to in any given thing.
Right.
So what we're about to witness is that the map is going to get larger again, and we're going to have a model that says, here's the whole value system, not just component parts. Organizational change is part of it. We've got practices and processes, we've got automation, we've got agile, we've got DevOps. How does it all fit together? So the map is growing again so that we can have you are here and there's no dragons here. They're over there somewhere and we'll discover them in the future.
Here be dragons.
That's right.
Yes.
So without that context and reference model, right, this is the value that ITIL brings. It provides us the context of the whole value composition. See, DevOps is great, but DevOps, self-admittedly only focuses on part of the value stream. Sometimes it's called the software factory. It's the, how do I take demand and produce supply? That's awesome, but that's only one part of the value chain. I can actually demonstrate if you'd like.
Oh, on the board?
Maybe.
Actions?
Actual actions?
We're
in video land.
This is the learning part.
All right.
So let me
write big. So we're on the board.
I'm going to keep it simple because this is what we tell in the integrated service management story.
We don't need to see myself on this one. Okay, go ahead.
So a long time we've been talking about plan, build, run.
Like forever.
This
Troy.
predated IT. It's a simple supply chain, right? But Lean tells us that you got to have demand on the front end of plan. So you've got to actually have an engagement component. So there's an engage over here where, hey, I better have a conversation and understand what value is and what, how I would describe that. And so you get this engage, plan, build, run context of a certain set of capabilities for taking demand and producing supply. All right.
Okay.
That's awesome. That's in essence where the DevOps community is existing. Actually, I will say it stops right here because it moves to production, but it focuses on what I'll call the software factory or the value chain for delivering net new value.
Okay.
But that's not the totality of all the capabilities in the IT value management system, right? The integrated service management. Because there are capabilities that sit outside of this overall structure, which direct and provide context for where this organization is going. So we think about portfolio and strategy. And so they direct the entire context of flow, right?
Well, sure. Wouldn't they? You'd have to have a strategy in order to do this, right?
Otherwise, we're not looking at it as a system of value. We're kind of dividing it up into silos, which is what exists right now.
That's kind of what we do now.
In fact, that's what we do. And then there's certain capabilities that underpin the overall value system, and these are capabilities, that's right, there's no division there, that apply to the whole thing, and that could be like security, that could be problem management. It's not just for incidents, and that's a key thing. That could be architecture, that could be risk and compliance, all of these things which are necessary. That's the stuff that keeps you out of jail in the orange jumpsuit. That doesn't happen.
Sounds good.
Right. So the interesting thing is that DevOps does a great thing to talk about how do you improve the automation and practices around here, but it doesn't have that, right? It doesn't have the overarching. It doesn't talk about the underpinning, and it really doesn't deal with, how do I then support it after the fact? So while DevOps is an awesome thing, and it's a very virtuous thing, the software factory is a key component of value delivery.
Yep.
It's not the totality. And so you have to focus on the total value system if you have to understand what is integrated service management. It's all of this, inclusive of all the different frameworks.
Well, you and I have had conversations, because you and I have no real life outside of this, about the concept of planned work versus unplanned work. And that basically DevOps, Agile, and Lean pretty much all focus on planned work.
That's right.
Whereas Ops spends their life, in some cases, unfortunately, reacting to unplanned events.
Not just Ops, because unless you're completely divorced from production and support as a dev community, and some organizations will do this. They'll actually divide their dev group in half and say, you guys only work on plan work and you guys get to do all the break fix, which it sucks for them because,
nobody likes to fix things, they like to create new things.
But the reality is they're second and third level for a lot of the service disruptions we face, right? So they get sucked into the vortex of unplanned work. Now add meetings to that. And I ask this question over and over again when I teach Lean. How much time do you actually spend in break fix in the context of support versus planned work, plus meetings? This is going to shock you, George, but almost every single time they'll come up with a percentage around 80 to 90% of their current capacity in a given week is spent on unplanned, not planned work. Even the folks which are supposed to be doing mostly planned work are sucked into the vortex of unplanned work because they don't manage and understand the context of the value system. In fact, most of the issues that are generating unplanned work is because we haven't understood this and we let defects slide to production without proper assurance and quality checks.
Hopefully, I think that most of the DevOps practices would start to get that. We'd start to find the errors sooner and sooner and sooner. Shift left,
Shift left, and that's a key component of that. That happens with agile technical practices, some of the decoupled architecture concepts of continuous deployment, microservices. We get the ability to break down changes into smaller chunks, and even if it does fail, because we have the ability to roll back to previous versions because of continuous integration and continuous deployment automation, all that makes this better. But the thing is, we have to understand that integrated service management is not just the software factory, but it has to include all of the value chain, and that's the story. Because theory of constraints, Eli Goldratt, right? He basically is quoted to say that if you optimize only one part of the value system, local optimization is a myth.
Explain.
Because I think that I'm optimizing the whole thing, but the constraint may not be what I'm currently looking at. The bottleneck may not be.
Oh, because I don't see the whole picture, so I don't even know where the real constraint is.
So let's imagine we flash forward. We use agile techniques, DevOps practices, and automation to increase fast flow right here, right?
Right.
But then that no longer is the bottleneck. So what happens the moment you remove one bottleneck? What will happen?
Another bottleneck.
You'll get another bottleneck. So if you're not looking at each of these components, you don't even know that there is a bottleneck. This is the principle of judoka. You can't govern the unseen. It's a principle that Lean tells us about. You have to understand it in order to govern and manage it. And so if you don't know the whole big picture, well, then you're up the creek without a paddle.
Thinking that you're not. Thinking you're doing just great. That's right. The other thing. You think everything's just rosy.
Right. So the premise and where ITIL is going with this update is to make the map bigger once more so that we can have a conversation like this that says, hey, how does it all fit together not individual component parts, but what is the integrated perspective?
And that's integrated service management.
That's integrated service management.
Cool. All right. I understand more than I did when we started this conversation.
Oh.
Have you finished with me now?
Oh, are you here?
I'm still here.
So David, lean applies to the whole thing, by the way.
Okay, Dave, would you like to do a recap of what Floyd
I
just said?
actually have
Ralph?
I've got an IT strategy meeting I have to go to.
Oh,
right
do
now.
you?
Yeah.
Oh, how convenient.
Okay, see you later.
Right. Is Dave in there? Is Dave in there? Get him out of here.
Hi, David. Does that
All
make
right.
sense?
Yeah. Okay. Great. All right. Well, I hope that you have you've enjoyed this new video version of Practitioner Radio, Pink News Network #1. Troy, you're great as always. Thank you very much. And we'll be seeing you. Let's see what's coming up. You just published a paper or on your blog site.
So in the show notes we have the paper I just published. It's about this as well. And we're going to be talking about this webinars in the new year on this subject as well.
Right, exactly.
And pay attention and be excited about the ITIL update because it's talking about the bigger picture. It's time for the map to grow one more time.
Wait a minute, don't we have a class on this?
Yeah, we do. So
we have an integrated service.
you don't have to wait. You don't have
we
to
have
wait.
a class?
We actually have an integrated service management overview, which is a one-day thing. You can do that virtually or have us come on site. And we also are going to bring more context to this to talk about all the pieces and how they pull together in a more detailed essentials and maybe an advanced course as well.
And that's going to be available in January. Shameless plug, shameless plug. By the way, if it's January, what about February? What's happening in February, Troy?
Well, our annual integrated service management.
Integrated Service Management Conference.
It's already been integrated for some time, and we talk about all this
now
stuff.
we can say it, yeah. Okay, so Pink 18, of course, happening in the third week in February in Orlando. Lovely facility, not in Vegas this year. We're now in Orlando. It'll be warm. It'll be sunny. You can go to the beach. No, you can't go to the beach. You have to go to my sessions and Troy's sessions. Anyway, thank you very much. Appreciate you watching. Look carefully for the next one of these.
See you next time on PNN.
Bye-bye.